Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Bald Explorer Live with me, Richard Vobes, and we are reading our book of the month, The Lure of Sussex by Thurston Hopkins, Thurston Hopkins, and we're going to start a chapter called Galsworthy's West Sussex Environment. And I'm just going to move this microphone back a fraction like that, which will be useful. Hello to TurboStream out there in the interweb. Nice to see you. Thank you very much. And welcome to everybody else who's watching but not communicating on the chat. I have to say I've been very late, in fact, putting any of these up as a podcast. I do mean to do it, but I've forgotten, really. Ed Loud, hello to you. Good noonie afters. Have you managed to nick, borrow or steal a little bit of internet? I know you're struggling at the moment with the old internet there. It's very good of you to join. I have an orange, which I won't be eating during the show, but a glass of water to glug. So, this is it's an interesting and slightly different book, this one, than the one that we've been, or the types that we've been used to, but we are very close now. Look, this is how far we are. What is that? A fifth to go? A quarter to go? Possibly. Young Mr. Loud, not seen you of late. Hope he's... I think Ed has not been able to get any internet, which is a problem. Lee Lawson says, hi Richard, I can't stay to listen now. Some friends who I used to work with are coming any minute and I haven't seen them for nearly a year. I'll catch up with the reading later. No problem at all. Very nice of you to let me know. I will mark you down as absent, with a note from your mother. The idea of comfort scorned by the medieval mind and prohibited by the order of the Knights of Temple perhaps found its most kindly expression in the fine old houses of the Elizabethan period. And ever since those days, what things it is that our Englishman respects, prizes, pursues. What? And ever since those days, what things is it that Englishman respects, prizes, and pursued more than comfort? Justin Jones, a good afternoon to you. What does Ed say there? Well remembered, using a friend's Wi-Fi for 15 minutes. Internet is being switched on very soon. You ain't got rid of me. Good. I'm glad to know that we haven't got rid of you. Good man. An American once said to me, if you ask me to sum up the difference between the stock of the old country and other European peoples, I should work it out as something like this. When a Frenchman becomes prosperous, he says, I will have a flat in Paris and a season ticket for the opera house. Perhaps he actually says it like this. I will have a flat in Paris and a season ticket for the opera house. Maybe he said it more like the first time round. When fortune smiles on a Belgian, and I cannot profess to do a Belgian accent, so don't ask me. Do a Belgian accent? I can't. Don't ask me. When fortune smiles on a Belgian, he says, I will buy a rare picture. When a German, Jawohl, mein Herr Kapitän, makes a little money, he says, I will see that my son learns another language. But when an Englishman makes a little money, he says, I will buy myself one more comfort. Does he? I think he says, I will buy myself one more DSLR camera, or maybe a mirrorless, or another computer, or a gimbal, or a decent microphone, or another studio, or 100 other things that one needs to make these videos. This dictum seems particularly appropriate when carried to our leading English authors, for of late years they've been keenly sought for the comfort English manor houses with their friendly gabled roofs and drowsy chimney corners. Rudyard Kipling was the first settler when he purchased, in true feudalistic style, the manor of Bateman's at Burwash, with farms, watermill, miller, bailiff, and labourers complete. Joseph Conrad, Henry James, Stephen Crane, H.G. Wells. No one would have believed in the last decade of the whatever it was. And a host of other writers followed him, not to Bateman's, I think to their own places. And now Mr. John Galsworthy has forsaken his native Devon and settled into the heart of Sussex at Bury, a hamlet approached by devious roads and deep-drawn ravines. And for your delectation, ladies and gentlemen, I have actually dug out a picture from the interweb of the said author himself. This is John Galsworthy, looking very smart and somewhat piercingly at the camera. So he was writing, I think, in the 30s. Anyway, there is a picture, and there's the screen that tells you how many people are watching, and 2 likes. Thanks. Good morning, said Julio. It's 8 a.m. here. Been curious about your reading videos, listening while sorting out my desk at work. Well, hello to Julio. Arriba, arriba, arriba. If a Mexican wants a bit of comfort, he says, "Hey, arriba, arriba, arriba. I will have to listen to the Vogue show." That's obviously an even gringo. Anyway, I'm causing a little bit of a was it culturally inappropriate? Yes, sorry about that. Anyway, this Galsworthy geezer, he lives in a hamlet approached by devious roads and deep-drawn ravines. By the competition for old manor houses among our great authors. Oh, sorry, but, by and but are very similar to a man with one eye. But the competition for old manor houses among our great authors has been so keen that they have all been snapped up under Mr. Galsworthy's nose, and he has had to be content with a modern imitation. Good gracious, I can't believe that. Mr. Galsworthy's house was built about 20 years ago, and the stone for its construction was carted from Swanage in Dorset. It is the kind of place that one would expect him to choose. Oh, and it could be dismissed with 2 words, comfort and simplicity. Comfort, these bloody authors. They want to have a little bit of hardship in their lives. Give them a nice wooden bench to sit on. From the outside, it is coldly practical. Oh, it's probably horribly boring then. Presenting an impressive face of grey stone, bedded on stone, springing out of the iron rock of Sussex, and surrounded by a high and forbidding wayside wall. The roof is covered with huge slabs of Horsham stone, which came from a ruined Tudor house in the neighbourhood. 2 very handsome stone smoke stacks rise from each end of the sweeping roof, giving a hint of the huge inglenook within. Previous to his move in Sussex, he lived at Manorton in Devon, and also occupied a flat in Adelphi Terrace, where he was near a neighbour of Mr. Granville Barker, who produced his first play, The Silver Box, at the Court Theatre, don't you know. He was born in 1867 at Coombe in Surrey, comes of Devonshire stock on his father's side, was a Harrow boy, and went up to New College at Oxford. Sounds like he was born with a silver spoon in his gob. In 1890, he was called to the bar. "You, boy, Galsworthy, come to the bar, you young, inconsiderate, snivelling little golden spoon in the mouth, boy, silver spoon in the mouth, boy, come." And at the bar, he probably had a gin and tonic, a couple of whiskies, and probably a black and tan, whatever that is. Oh, a Dachshund, isn't it? A Dachshund, a black and tan? Anyway. His insight into legal matters was inherited, for his father practised as a London solicitor. Not that kind of solicitor. Oh, hello. It is significant that Justice, the play that established him as a literary force in England and America, not only deals with the law, but has been the means of an alteration in some of the unreasonable What an alteration in some of its unreasonable rigours, really. Mr. Winston Churchill had admitted that when he was Home Secretary he was so far impressed by justice that he made certain alterations in the prison regulations. Good heavens! I met Mr. Galsworthy tramping the Sussex Downs soon after his arrival at Bury, and he seemed very little altered during the last few years. Dressed for life in the open air, he wears loose-fitting tweed garments, a comfortable slouch hat, and grey suede shoes. Suede, I think. Suede shoes are something a little bit different and have a slight different odour to his feet. He is a tall, slim man, totally unlike the long-haired and terror-inspiring author of Imagination. On the contrary, clean, neat, and well set up. What does that mean, well set up? Are you well set up? But no one could mistake his lips and chin for anything but energy and precision, nor his eyes for anything but sympathetic strength. I thought he had piercing eyes. He walks with an easy swing step, leaving most pedestrians well behind in a few minutes. His interests are those of a country lover who, however, does not find shooting and hunting of any interest. Good for him. I like him now immensely more. Bury seems to have a little history attached to it. Its cricket traditions are rather curious. In June 1796, the married women of Bury beat the single women by 80 runs, and thereupon uniting forces challenged any team of women in the county. Not only did the women of Bury shine at cricket, but in a Sussex paper for 1791, I find an account of 2 Bury daughters assuming the names of Big Ben and Mendoza and engaging in a hardly contested prize fight before a large gathering. Big Ben won. Well, you imagine what kind of mammoths they must have been. Too remote from the main railways and towns, I'm afraid that the hamlet of Bury has seen its best days. I'm going to have to go to Bury. I haven't been to Bury. It's just the other side of Arundel, down to Bury Hill. Stagecoaches used to traverse its length and breadth, but the days of stagecoaches have ceased and determined the chances of commercial improvement. What? I don't know what I'm talking about. Stagecoaches used to traverse its length and its breadth, but the days of stagecoaches having ceased and determined, the chances of any commercial improvement are very small. And this is why Mr. Galsworthy has settled there. I suppose in Bury then they must have come through the village because it's very quiet. And unless you actually got any business there, I think the roads are pretty much thin and narrow and quite deeply set. There is only one chance of Mr. Galsworthy's peace being disturbed, and that is in the case of the gold rush, for I was informed that a geologist has recently found in the strata of a local sandpit some flakes of gold. Good gracious, I've got Mr. Kellerson's pan, gold sifting pan. I shall go and take it to Bury, see if I can find the gold. One of the first public duties undertaken by Mr. Galsworthy on his arrival, what a name, Galsworthy, on his arrival at Bury was to open a Dickens pageant at Brighton, which is nowhere near. He remarked that he had hankered after the fair and famous county of Sussex for many years. They all do, you know, they all do. That's why they're all coming over here in their rubber dinghies. Every part of the world is famous for something, he continued. Arizona, for instance. Oh, he's from Devon, isn't he? He's originally from Devon. Every part of the country is famous for something. He's a very erudite and educated man. I'm sure he doesn't speak like that at all. Arizona, for instance, has more rivers and less water, more cattle and less beef than any other state in America, and I do not yet know for what Sussex is famous, except perhaps for having smaller sheep with large joints, more chalk, and less gout than any other part of England, but whatever its fame consists of, it's good enough for me. If it's good enough for you, it's bloody well good enough for me, says John Galsworth in a fake Devonshire accent. Yes. Mr. Roy C. Hopkins visited Mr. Galsworthy at Bury on behalf of a well-known American newspaper, and some points of this interview may be of interest to the reader, and if they're not, you're getting them anyway. Mr. R. C. Hopkins writes, I wonder if this is a Mr. R. T. Hopkins, R. Thurston Hopkins. This is a different one, though. And he is on behalf of an American newspaper. So, my first surprise was to learn that the library in which we were settled was his workroom. I had expected to find a large, sumptuous desk and a business-like swivel chair, but I could discover nothing in the room to reveal the author's craft except a fine old mahogany 18th century bureau. This moved me to inquire, "Where do you write your books?" Mr. Galsworthy appeared faintly amused, and replied, "Seated in that chair," and pointed to an armchair by the side of the fireplace, and close to the window. "In the chop-house, W.C. Fields." I've turned into W.C. Fields. "Looking out onto the lawn, with a magnificent view of Berry Hill." Possibly the better to convince me, he therefore reclined in the chair and took up a leather blotter. "On this blotter," he said, "is stamped my horoscope. Do you believe in them? I don't." Mentally, I visualized the career of the creator of the Forsyths. Hang on, are we still on the same? Oh, yeah, it was the same character. Sorry about the sudden interruption here. Mentally, I visualized the career of the creator of the Forsyths. The setting was favorable, but it would be difficult to imagine either Justice or The Silver Box being written with such a beautiful background. While I was engaged in admiring an old Dutch marqueterie cabinet, whatever the hell that is, Mrs. Galsworth entered, and directly I met the distinguished author's wife, and I realized that the interior of Berry House was a reflection of her presence. Mrs. Galsworthy was in a charmingly natural setting. Mrs. Galsworthy was in a charmingly natural setting, and instinctively I had in mind a picture of the porch of the house with my hostess on the step. Unfortunately, the day was very cold. Nevertheless, I put up the question, I'd rather, if I must, be photographed in my favorite place in the music room. I don't know what I'm saying now. Mrs. Galsworthy sat down at the piano as she spoke, and although the light was fading, I photographed her there, with a compliment on the beautiful simplicity of her music room. "A pleasant room," she acknowledged, "but the radiators are so unsightly. I think I shall have to ruin some Persian rugs over them." "Apparently you're fond of music," I said. "Yes, I'm supposed to be a musician of sorts," she said. "Are you inclined to the literary side of life?" I said. "A little," Mrs. Galsworthy admitting with a burst of confidence. "At least I've translated a volume of some such name of whom I can't possibly pronounce short stories." While I was apologizing to Mrs. I don't know where I'm going with this accent now. While I was apologizing to Mrs. Galsworthy for invading her premises on the plea that the ubiquitous journal had perforce to perform his allotted task, since it was always the desire of one half of the world to know how the other half lived, Mrs. Galsworthy conducted me out of the house into the beautiful grounds, where, hallelujah, there were carefully clipped yew hedges, but which portrayed an orderliness foreign to the popular conception of an author. I'll go back to the other one, I think, where it's had more control of the accent. It's almost like some wild horse that's coming out of my mouth, and I've got to tame it. At the garden front, now you don't know when I'm reading and just not reading and making it up. You're wasting your time. At the garden front of the house is a carefully fashioned Tudor porch, oaken door, inset, and a well-worn stone terrace, in front of which is a lawn of really good old turf, which makes many... How much more of this have I got to keep going? Quite a bit by the bloody hell looks of it. What? It doesn't go on for the whole rest of the chapter, because I'm going to go bonkers. Wait. I just need to focus my head for a moment. We'll break off there. Arriba, says, hey, gringo. My host Hey, gringo. My host informed me that the gardens were quite old, but the terrace was all that remained of the old house, which has been destroyed by fire. The new house, gringo, is the present one, added Mr. Galsworthy. It's only been built for 17 years. You touch anything, you die. The roof, they say, is of Purbeck stone, and I believe the walls are all of Bath stone. They're taking no risks. Anyway, sorry about that slight moment of complete... Anyway, this goes on for a bit, so I think I'll just go back into normal tone. This is this American author writing. And who was the architect, I said? Mr. Mart, who lives in Houghton. He returned to the library. You know, said Mrs. Galsworthy, I've only been here 2 or 3 months. I bought the place for my nephew, Rudolph Satter, the artist, and his wife to live in. But it's so jolly that we shall be down with him as often as we can. It's pleasant enough now, but it'll be far more beautiful in the spring and the summer. And the downs, they're just so splendid for riding. Isn't Berry on green sand? I asked. Yeah, it's on green sand, sometimes on quicksand, slow sand, I don't care whose sand it's on. A man the other day was only walking along the green sand when he was sucked under, and he said, help, you gotta help me. And the man looking down said to him, what do you mean I gotta help you? Have you got any last words? And he took up a pen. He said, my name's Philip Merson. I'm going to write this as a book. Oh, well, never mind, said the man, and as he disappeared underneath the quicksand and was never seen again. I've cut out a whole load of this waffle of Americanism nonsense because, to be honest with you, it's not adding anything and it's driving me bonkers. A pleasant approach to Bury is by footpath and ferry from Amberley, back in the days when you could catch a ferry across a river. It is a village of thatched roofs, Amberley this is, which has been extolled by 2 well-known men of letters, Hadrian Allcroft, the archaeologist, and S.P.B. Mays, the novelist. Mr. Suggett and I did one of his railway walks in a video not so long ago, well, about a year ago or more. Mr. Allcroft says, If Amberley were not, then would Bury be the goal of all pilgrims who come hereabout with its church and its manor house and the old tithe barn rumbling to the river, surely as perfect a specimen of England as an Englishman could desire to see. For your castles are all un-English things. They smack of the Norman mail fist. Bury has excuse to be jealous, but she has her compensations. She has a finer view of Amberley than Amberley of Bury. And, moreover, she holds the dog and duck. Mr. Mays writes, If you want to know what a village inn should look like, visit the low-thatched Dog and Duck. Never have I seen bedrooms so inviting, a peacefulness so profound. I cursed the eggs that were now waiting for me at Amberley, and dashed down the road to the ferry, lest I should succumb to the temptation to stay. Bury... Oh, that's the end of him. Bury also holds other lions. One is a deep smuggler's lane. but a lane which existed many centuries before the shifts of free trade and contraband troubled Sussex. It is the Underhill Road to Bigners Villa, and is cut through the chalk to a depth of 50 feet at certain sections. Where the hell is that then? I've been round that neck of the woods. I haven't done any videos, but I must find that road. Between the church and the ferry is a notable tithe barn. I must find that. I must find all of this. Maybe I'll go there tomorrow. Maybe I will go there tomorrow in search. My quest for England continues. I have not given West Sussex its fair meed of attention. That's a lovely way of putting it, isn't it? It's fair meed. I have not given West Sussex its fair meed of attention in this book for lack of space, which can only but I can only indicate a few of its charms. That Richard Vobes is charming. I've seen him strolling around with a gimbal and a camera. A day should be spent at Chichester, however. There are many picturesque old inns and houses which merit attention. The Fountain, the South Street, and the White Horse look inviting. And then there is the unmatched St. Mary's Hospital, Lion Street, founded in 1168. St. Mary's Hospital, St. Richard's Hospital is in Chichester, but that wasn't founded in 1168. My son Stanley was born in Richard's Hospital. There is the small port at Del Quay in Appledrum Parish, 1.5 miles distant. Must go to Del Quay, actually. The Gothic Market Cross was built by Bishop Story in the year 1500. The city walls are picturesque and full of interest to the antiquarian, and full of mortar to a mason. Oh, they killed that joke, didn't I? Full of interest to the antiquarian and full of mortar to the... Oh, I've forgotten it already. To the mason. What's the matter with you, Vobes? What's the matter with you, Vobes? They were largely restored during the reigns of Edward III, Richard II, and Henry VI, and originally had 16 towers and 4 gates, which latter were removed a century ago. In the year 1091, a cathedral was begun by the Bishop Ralph and dedicated to St. Peter. This edifice was several times damaged by fire, but in 1199 it was restored and enlarged by Bishop Seffrid, and the present cathedral is mainly the work of 2 prelates. It is exceedingly interesting and has a history which cannot fail to delight the ecclesiologist. There are 10 parishes. All Saints in the West Palant is of ancient origin. St. Andrew's, at the rear of East Street, is also old and well worth a visit. The registers of St. Martin, date from 1160. St. Olaf not only contains portions of Roman, Saxon and early English work, but is the oldest church in the Diocese of Chichester. Part of it date from around the year 680. 680! The Church of St. Rumbold. Mr. Rumbold, you're all doing extremely... No, he was the one with the big ears, wasn't he, Rumbold? The Church of St. Rumbold, Rumbold's Wick, also exhibits traces of Roman work, but the other places of worship are modern. Modern. The one who walks will find some of the most magnificent country in all of Sussex, to my mind, in all of England, and to the north and west of Chichester, to the north, yes, and to the west. Right, to the west of Chichester, one will have to go. A good walk, okay, goes out of the town towards New Fishbourne. New Fishbourne? And follows lanes and footpaths by Oakwood House, and so by Chapel Lane and Inham's Lane to Stoke Down. At the summit of the down is Stoke Clump, where a gorgeous view of the red roofs of Chichester and the dulled steel waters of Fishbourne and Bosham unfolds before your eyes. Along the crest of Stoke Down we may pick out the ancient track to Kingley Vale. Ah, good old Kingley Vale. But holding on to the high ground which climbs from the Dew Pond towards Hounsome Firs, an hour's walk will bring us to refreshment at the Barley Mow in the village of Walterton. From the side of this inn, a lane leads by Broxknap Cottage to Stanstead House, and through the grounds to Rowland's Castle on the Hampshire side. This is a good day's walk at a leisurely pace. You're telling me it's probably about 20-odd miles, isn't it? Singleton with a sibilant S, Singleton, 6 miles south of Midhurst, should be visited. I've done a video at Singleton if you want to have a quick look. Not at this moment in time, please. Thank you. Can you all pay attention? Thank you. Those of you at the back talking and throwing chalk, I'm watching you. The village is situated in a depression of the Downs. The church of St. John the Evangelist exhibits some Saxon work. The manor of Singleton was held under Edward the Confessor. On Trundle Hill, made a video up there, 900 feet, are the remains of an ancient British encampment. We are on the next chapter, which is called Windmill Days, but I'm going to pause. I've been rather silly, and you can slap my wrist. Naughty. Don't step on the blue suede shoes. No, I would try not to. On the blue suede shoes, of course. Big Ben and Mendoza are two famous male pugilists of the time. The women must have adapted the names. Female bare-knuckle prize fighters were not unknown at the end of the 18th century, says Morton Lewis. Thank you very much for that. TurboStream says, ooh, Bury in Sussex. Was thinking that this was away in the north, following on a map as usual. Oh, good. Yes, Bury, very nice little place. And is different to the Bury up near Manchester, or on the way to Manchester. We stayed in a place called Manchester, and we said, we're looking for Bury. And the bloke said, Bury? Bury? I said, no, Bury. Oh, Bury? Aye, Bury. It's down there, up along, round along, down the Billabong. W. Seed Fields, funniest comedian. Anyone who doesn't like children and dogs can't all be bad. Yes, I like W. C. Fields. Going to the chop house. Michael White, I just don't give a damn. The religious deep south coming through. Yes, sorry about that. Some wild horse come out of my mouth, needs taming. Classic Richard today. Yes, it was like a wild horse coming out of my mouth. It was just no control. Thank you for that, Morton. You can write that one down. That is. Oh, you've already typed out. Wild horse comes out of my mouth and needs taming. Audrey, hello, says Audrey. Yes, warning, Audrey. Richard is most excitable today. Yes, you never quite can tell, can you, what's going to happen? Been on the Kentucky Fried Chicken. Morton, have you already put him in touch with your sugar mama contact? LOL. Yes, I popped in to see the lovely Julia today, and she offered me a cookie which has sugar in it. Oh, lordy, the sugar has taken... I need to keep off the sugar. Young Mr. Grace. Oh, yes, that's right, Mr. Grace. You're all doing very well. What was the actor's name? Anyone know? Morton Lewis says, I think Mary Carmen would be a tad bemused by a Ricardo's high level of English eccentricity. I know some single ladies in Liverpool and Manchester, but I can't see it tolerating up the north. Is this the Marie Carmen? Is this sexy Spaniard who you had me lined up for? Sorry, didn't mean to come out of my phone. Michael, what? Sorry, hello, I didn't mean to come out on my phone. We didn't see it, so it doesn't matter. Right, let's get on to the dizzy heights of windmills, ladies and gentlemen, whilst we have a chance. But first, I shall gulp some water and rub an orange on my head. And we are now ready to crack on. Is there a picture of a windmill here? Oakley Mill. There is a picture of Oakley Mill, Bartat. Windmill Days, this chapter is called. About old times, there always hovers a particular charm. A mellow atmosphere overhangs them. The presence, as we battle along through it, seems full of fiction and metallic clatter. But looking back, old days take on a rosy hue. The sharp edges are gone. Even the petty cares and worries which irritated us in the past seem very trivial to the difficulties which loom up in our paths as we grow older. Perhaps the modern appetite for speed and things carried on and things carried out on a large-scale system is responsible for this outlook in life. Well, maybe that's true. And this is the point which brings me to the subject I have to deal with, the old English windmill. A windmill stands for old times. It is a monument to many things which have vanished from country life forever. Bear in mind, this was written in 1928, and it was only sort of within the last 20 to 30 years that windmills were going out of fashion. So, it's quite adroit of him to be writing this, I think. Did I use adroit in the correct? Probably not. But yeah, I think he was. These things were going and the change was coming in, I suppose. But, we could say that about dial-up phone, the old dial-up phones, which have been, 30 years ago, we would have had dial-up phones with the dials, and we look back nostalgically even 30 years. So I suppose, and we still look back nostalgically at windmills, but he's looking, it's an interesting comparison. It's interesting to me. Nobody else gives a damn, I know. A windmill stands for old times. Yes. The windmill was picturesque, true. A perfect combination of sweeping line and austere simplicity. The windmill was suggestive of peaceful activity. The rumble of its stones was soothingly agreeable, and the twirling of its sweeps gave a jolly touch to the landscape for 10 miles around. Interesting that he calls them sweeps and not sails, because that is the Sussex term for them. The windmill was slow but sure. It did its work with thoroughness, but without the mad frenzy of the modern steam mills, which decimates the essential germ and the branny parts of the wheat. Yeah, giving us that awful white flour. The windmill did not possess the modern spirit of grab-all commercialism. It worked on the live and let live principle, which produced a moderate income for the miller and allowed a dozen other millers within a radius of 10 miles to earn their living also. Isn't that, now, out of all the silliness of today, isn't that an incredible philosophy? Let me just read that again, because I think this is what I bang on about. The windmill didn't possess the modern spirit of the grab-all commercialism, like Tesco's. It worked on the live and let live principle, which produced a moderate income for the miller, and this is the key thing, and allowed a dozen other millers within a radius of 10 miles to earn their living also. And the old village shop and the greengrocer and all these things that used to have their place on the high street that people would go to, and then the next high street would have another greengrocers and what have you, and the same with the next village and all the rest of it. And that was fine. And then in comes the grab-all commercialism, as he says. And the what? Have we... Hello?
Hello.
Yes, I'm live. You know that, don't you?
Oh, goodness, I've rung the wrong down number.
Oh.
I'm so sorry.
Are you ringing somebody else?
Yeah, I was supposed to ring my husband.
Oh. Well, it's an easy confusion. I'm bald with glasses and very charming.
And there I am. There's your phone ringing now on the old screen. Sorry about that.
That's all right. It's a lovely Julia, ladies and gentlemen. Lovely to...
Lovely idiot.
Yes.
Idiot, Julia.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you go and ring hubby now.
Yes, we'll go find out what he's up to. Cool. Well, break a leg with the rest of the show, won't you?
Yes,
I'm enjoying it, and I will enjoy it continuing.
Give my regards to your mum.
I will do.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
I thought when I saw her name on the thing, I just thought, oh, the stream must have cancelled. She's ringing me to tell me it's collapsed, or that I'm talking to myself, or stopped going off on one. So yeah, so there we are. So then we have these big commercial companies like Tesco's and all of that, and they move into the high street and they obliterate everybody else. And there was, what was it I read in a book or I saw on a documentary? I think it was a documentary about one town in Norfolk or somewhere like that in East Anglia. And the councils had said, no, we're not having a Tesco's here. We're not having it. And they held out for something like 10 years. And Tesco's wanted to buy a piece of land. And they said, no, we're not having it. We're not having it. Because they had this unique load of shops. And was this in a book I read it? Did we read this? I can't remember. I don't think we read it. It's a recent thing. And in the end, Tesco's bought up this place. Was it Tesco's? It may have been another company. I think it was Tesco's. Yeah, no, it was Tesco's, because I then had to look on Street View to see what had happened. And yeah, Tesco's came in and the other shops, they closed down. Those businesses were closed down. And this is what's happening. And I just love this concept, this wonderful thing, the live and let live principle, where you have a moderate income for yourself, but you allow the others to have an income. And why is that such a bad thing? That's, I was pontificating this morning as I was walking around making a video talking about the quest for England and what is my quest? Where am I going with it? What is the purpose of it? And what is the England I'm searching for? Because I'm in a bit of a quandary with all of this. But this answers this answers that question. This business about not being a money grabber and wanting to have one company that basically owns the high street. So we have we've got 5 supermarkets or whatever, is that everybody can have a go. Live and let live. It's brilliant. Anyway, contrast the Windmill with a large, ugly roller mill with its clangour and its indecent hurry, and you will appreciate all these points. All this, you will say, is not logic. No, my friend, there you down me. Actually, to prove by logic and rule that the old times were better, to prove by logic and rule that the old times were better than the new would not be easy. They had their lacks. This is written 92 years ago. The world learns and gains many things as it ages. It is hoped that it grows better as it grows older. But I am certain of one thing: it does not grow more kindly or more picturesque. This was written 92 years ago. However, I must keep away from argumentation, for it has no place in this simple chapter on the old English windmill. And yet that, to me, is probably the most important chapter in the whole book. The reader will first required to know something about the working of a mill. Before we go into that, let me just have a quick look on the comments, just in case. Bogus Job Seeker says Harold Bennett. I don't know what that is apropos of. Joseph is being a damned king. Histrionics. I won't let him eat any more dirt. No, a good idea. I don't know where that's come from. I thought it might be Clive from the walk this morning. Oh, what, ringing in? Absolute. Tell me about more lizards. We are living in a worldwide monopoly board. We are, says Michael White. When I was a little, says Audrey, the nearest we had to a supermarket was Home and Colonial Stores. Can you imagine being allowed to have anything called Colonial Stores? Can you imagine that now? Oh, the furore. TurboStream is, the word is great. Agreed, Richard. Greed destroys all before it. You're so true. And Julia says, sorry, Richard, I didn't mean to worry or confuse you, nor interrupt the show. In other news, hubby is working late again after all. Oh, you should come and do the show. Oh, no, you can't come and do the show with me. Dump your oldest child at works and bring your youngest child here and do the show this evening. You're not feeling very... Poor old Julie's not feeling very well at the moment. Bless her little socks. Right, the reader, it's... How are we doing? We've only got 15 minutes. Okay, so I've waffled a bit in this, but that was That is such an important thing. And how many authors have we read who have, in 92 years ago, or sort of at that period, that crossover between the beginning of the mechanized world, the globalized world was coming in, and it was seen and not to be a good thing. And here we are, looking at this world, which is, well, we've had the uglification of this world, haven't we, in the last 92 years? We have uglified it to a point which is just, people are, millennials, I think, justify it because they don't know any different. And I don't mean to be nasty about that or dismissive of their views, but I really think there is something in that. Anyway, the reader will first be required to know something about the working of a windmill. There are generally 3 floors in a mill. Some contain 4 or 5, but 3 floors will give the essential parts of the tackle and machinery. The top floor holds the corn, or other cereal, to be ground. The second supports the grind stones, and the third receives the flour as it passes from the stones. Over the top floor is the cupola with the wind shaft, which is turned by the sweeps. This is the long shaft that the sweeps are attached to, and it turns like this, and so acts then as a gear. The motion which the sails communicate to this shaft is transferred by beveled wheels to a central shaft running top to bottom of the mill. On this central shaft are fixed the cog wheels engaging the millstones and other milling contrivances. The corn passes down a spout to a funnel above the stones and trickles through it into a central hole in the upper stone. As the grain falls from the funnel to the stone, it's regulated by the miller's damsel, a small tray on a spring called a shoe, which is shaken rapidly by the action of a revolving 3-toothed cam. The speed at which the tray is shaken is carefully watched by the miller, and he adjusts it so that an even flow of grain is passed to the stones. This contrivance, beautiful word, contrivance, is called a damsel because, like a young unmarried woman, it is a bit tricksy and is apt to make trouble for everyone all the way round if it is allowed too much freedom. That's a little sexist, I would imagine. I suggest that the pseudonym for this fitting should be changed to that of flapper. Bear in mind this is the 1920s, which more nearly suggests its actions and its wiles, you cheeky scout. If the damsel becomes choked or fixed, the stones grind dry. Oh yes. So in other words, if this thing that's regulating the corn gets jammed, nothing goes onto the stones, and they're turning like this, and there's a grave danger that the friction causing a fire in the mill, and if the grain comes too quickly through the stones and they're clogged and their balance is destroyed, a circumstance which may cause great havoc to the mechanism and the faces of the grindstones. So in other words, the miller has got to watch this this tray, the damsel shaking the corn as it comes down. The last Sussex mill which I inspected was Barnum Mill. He has written, R. Thurston, Hopkins, has written a book called something about windmills, In Search of Windmills or something. And I looked at it, and I think it was about 25 quid, so I couldn't afford to buy it. If anyone wants to buy it for me, it would be lovely. It was second hand on Amazon and Abe Books, but I just couldn't justify paying that much myself. But yeah, that would be an interesting read, I'm sure. The last Sussex mill which I expected was at Barnum Mill. Now, Barnum Mill the mill is still there at Barnum. It's a black mill. It's a tower mill. I've passed it, and actually I nearly went there the other day to do a video on passing it. So it's interesting. It's a tower mill. Oh yeah, that's right. It is a tower mill, but I think it's a private house now. It's a tower mill built of flints, boulders and cement. The mechanism is modern for a windmill, for J.W. Holloway and Sons of Shoreham refitted it in 1890. The sweeps have now been placed out of action by a gas engine, but they still remain in situ, minus the shutters, lately removed to lessen the wind resistance, which makes sense. 2 pairs of stones are still in use for grinding barley meal and Sussex ground oats. The old bells, which were used to warn the miller when the hoppers were empty, are still attached to the feeding spouts here. The bell was attached to a cord beneath the grain in the hopper, and when the grain was all consumed by the stones, the string was released and the bell fell against the rapidly moving shoe, where it remained ringing until someone arrived, which again is another essential thing, because you'll end up with the stones going dry and possibly causing a spark. I climbed into the huge cupola of Barnum Mill and had a good chance of inspecting a beautiful piece of craftsmanship by a Sussex millwright. The interior of the cupola is a delicate framework of wood, the roundish swelling of its timbers giving it a vitality and charm which reminded me of the framework of a sailing ship. Mr. Barker helped me to crawl out into the fantail stage, which juts out from the cupola and overlooks the country all the way around Climping, Bognor and Arundel. Yeah, you probably get a great view from up there. When my father was working this mill, he could count 11 other windmills working from this platform, said Mr. Baker, but now, as you'll see, they've all vanished. Halnaker will, not Hal, Hanaker, it's without the L, Hanaker Windmill can just be discerned on the skyline over towards Stane Street, but that was built in the time of Queen Anne, but it has been nothing but a wingless ruin for the last 100 years. And they've just fairly recently refurbished Hanaker Mill, actually. The windshaft of Barnum Mill is a hollow steel one, with a rod fitted in the core of it, which opens and closes the shutters of the sweeps. Chains are attached to the rod at one end of the windshaft, and they hang down the outside of the mill to be reached by a gallery. I'm sorry, I've lost what that means. Chains, yes, are attached to the rod at the end of the windshaft, and they hang down the outside of the mill to be reached by a gallery a little above the ground floor. The cupola is covered with sheets of lead painted white and is capped with an enormous oaken knob. The sweeps, now the cupola, I think they call that a Dutch cap now, don't they? The sweeps change direction and keep to the wind by the action of the fan wheel, which is at the back, which, by means of worms, not little creatures, worm gears I think he means, turns the cupola round on an iron track fitted with roller bearings. Barnum Mill stands up boldly and makes a picturesque background with its exterior gallery. And its collection of old millstones grouped about the roundhouse. The black tower and the white cupola is a familiar landmark for some miles around. And there I'm going to leave it. This chapter goes on, and he's going to go to Littlehampton next, but I think we will leave it there because it's I can't fully get out of it. But that's fascinating. I loved that bit about the windmill, and of course that little piece of history about it was just delightful. Morton says Coleridge and Wordsworth were worried about this stuff in the early 1800s. God knows what they would think now, says Morton Lewis. Yes, I can understand that. I mean, every generation probably doesn't like the change, or part of, some of them embrace the change, the younger people, and I guess that's because they don't they don't know any different. They're of that ilk, and they embrace the change. And I suppose when I was younger, I did the same. When I was keen to, when I was working with Super 8, I was keen to upgrade to, well, now digital, of course, and it makes life easier in technological aspects. But there is no denying, I think, and correct me if you disagree, that since the war, the Second World War, 80 years ago, the architecture from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s have been bland, and the many of the improvements have been detrimental. The farming we've spoken about many times. Yes, we've got more roads and trains, and well, the train service, perhaps maybe that's not as good as it was, although it's cleaner. It's no longer polluting the atmosphere, that's true. And the motorways get us across, but at what cost to wildlife, all of this? We're travelling more and more, but at what cost to the planet? So, I don't know. It swings and it's roundabouts, but aesthetically, when you look at the beauty from pre-war days, there is, other than what was naturally there by the geology, you drive up near Milton Keynes and past the Amazon warehouse and distribution houses and these great big utilitarian buildings, and tell me that the improvements are aesthetically pleasing. I cannot accept that. Michael says, I'm watching on my phone. Who is the chap in your thumbnail? I can't enlarge it. What? I am watching on my phone. Who is the chap in your thumbnail? What chap in my thumbnail? Michael White. It's not named Morton. It's a miniature by the famous British artist whose name eludes me for the moment. Oh, I see. Sorry, you're talking to him. Right, fair enough. Anyway, Kay Dean says, hi, Richard and everyone. Haven't been able to watch a live lately. Good to be here. Take care. Thank you very much, Kay Dean. Edward Moulding, H&C morphed into Safeways. Oh, did it? H&C being Coleridge. No, not Coleridge. Where was it? The Home and Colonial stores. Oh, well, that's interesting. Morton Lewis says Co-op. Anyway, that's it. That's our hour done, pretty much. Thank you so much for coming along. Tomorrow we'll read... What's tomorrow? Thursday. I think we'll finish this by the end of the week. Look how far we are now. Which is good, because there won't be any readings next week. Julia and I are going off to Wales. I've got an interview with Patrick Holden from the Sustainable Food Trust on Tuesday. We are going up, first of all, to meet up with Fran and Rich on floating our boat, to do a video with them. And they're somewhere near, well, we're staying near Oswestry, and we'll be within 20 or 30 miles of where they are. And then I've got this appointment on the following day. So that's Monday. Tuesday I've got my interview, and Wednesday we're coming back. So it's a busy time. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. And I am doing the Vogue Show this evening on the Vogue Show channel on YouTube, so do join me then. If you've enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. That would be grand. And I'm going to have my orange. As you can see, I'm sort of itty to get into. Take care. Thanks for watching. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye for now.